Hey, welcome to the Reloved Guitars workshop on a bloody stormy Tuesday night in January, and it really is blowing a gale out there, but we're nice and cozy here in the workshop, as long as it doesn't get blown over completely. But I just want to introduce to you this guitar that I think is going to be another one of the Reloved Guitars AristoCats, and this is about as grotty in some ways as you can get from the 70s. This is a Columbus SG style guitar made from glorious ply. Who knows what the neck's made of. Got a bit of rosewood on the surface there, which is kind of nice with its old age, and it's got a slightly Gibson-esque bridge, which is quite rare to see. It doesn't, instead of having the screw thing here, you've got the you just got the little circular things. Makes it a hell of a lot harder to adjust unless you've got a lifter, which I don't have, so I'll probably end up just having to slack the strings off to do that. It's got some groovy old knobs with pointers to show you the settings you're on. Pickup selector switch. Some very low grade tuners which we can get rid of, and some pickups here which are probably not even humbuckers at all, and they're very microphonic, so if I turn this on right now you can hear everything around here gets noisy. And it sort of goes from thick sounding this is not altogether horrible actually. Ding. Quite like that sound. So anyway, it's a 70s special. Very not humbucker sounding pickups, I have to say. That's what it sounds like. A bit of dirt. Doesn't break up. Doesn't break up very well under distortion. Well, it's not the greatest sound I've ever heard, but hey, it's an old guitar. On the clean settings, it's quite unusual. Not bad on the clean settings, but kind of more like a slightly warm single coily sound than anything else. Anyway, the point about this is, if I'm going to do anything to this, I'm going to make it play like a decent SG, hopefully, with some good humbuckers in there. Anyway, that's the plan. What I like about this guitar is several things. I like how dirty brown it is. It's got that real 1974 colour. It's not in bad condition overall. It's got a little bit of a dimple or a dent there where it's been squeezed against something in the neck, but it doesn't upset the playing. And it's got, if I can make it stay on, it's got the strap button on the neck, unusually. So a lot of SGs have them there, or sometimes there, but this one has it slightly further forward on the neck. And what it means, which I think is a great thing, in one sense, is that you've got a better balance for this guitar. The only other downside, of course, is if you're going to play up here, you've got restricted access to the top frets. So for a lead guitarist, that might actually not be a very smart idea after all. So it may be that that's worth changing out, come to think of it, despite it starting out looking like a good thing. So we'll have a look at moving that. The fingerboard is a bit worn on here. I don't know how well you'll be able to see that. Fingerboard is a little bit worn. It's got some sort of dents in it. So I'm going to take this thing completely to pieces and refret it. There's a big dent there which I'm going to fill and smooth out so you don't get caught under the fingers. And there's some dents here and there that could do with filling out. And there's a bit of cracking that's gone on the laminate here, which again just be easier to check and glue and perhaps fill with some lacquer as well. I really don't know what lacquer they would have used on the guitar like this. I mean, this feels 1970s. It doesn't even feel like we've got to the 80s. It's Japanese made. Feels 70s to me. But anyway, other than that, it's got its sort of pedigree. And I'd like to see what we can do with it, as always. It's got the sort of headstock, open book headstock thing here. But yeah, it's all there, waiting to be done. So I'm going to take this thing completely to pieces. The reason for that is that actually there's nothing really about it that makes me want to play it right now. So we might as well get started and strip it down to all its bits and then just have a bit of fun at looking inside it and seeing what we've got. And also, oh look, I've managed to free up a container for parts. Yeah, we can have a good poke inside. Now this one, I'm not going to really do what I would normally do, which is get straight onto the fret leveling or setting the action and then fret leveling, because basically I want everything off this start again time. So it's going to be some time before we get the strings back on here, in which case there's no point sort of hanging around trying to preserve these strings for any reason. So we'll get them off, we'll get the tuners off, we'll just literally take this apart and we'll be building it back up from the ground upwards. This nut has to go because it's split, but you know, aside from that, it's in reasonably good all-round condition, and I do think it's got a certain pedigree with its 1970s brownness. But I also have to say, I like the colour of the rosewood, and I like the fact that, oh my goodness, will I ever be able to get this off? Probably not. I like the fact that it's got binding on the edge as well, which is quite a nice touch. Let's see if we can get these things off. No, not the right size. Is that bigger or smaller? It's slightly finer. This is very well. Oh yeah, we should be able to. Yeah, not bad. Out it comes. So everything's going to come off. Everything, completely everything. Now, as it comes off, you know, we see what we see. Those are unusual, non-standard. In fact, there are even two of them are slightly different thickness, these screw heads. Here we have the Tune-o-matic bridge, and this has got what appears to be bone saddle bits, all right, and that's really nice. I mean, that's a nice little touch, quite unusual. Again, that will clean up nicely. We'll take out these Gibson-esque spinny things if they come out. No, they don't. The circle bit comes off. Okay, I get it. I'm going to attempt to pull the knobs off by hand. Again, we'll need to replace this. Place the electrics on here. Using my patented two-handed grip. And if that doesn't work, resort to the old ripped t-shirt approach. Oh, some of these, sometimes it feels really stiff, and that isn't working either. They've got T and V on them, which is nice to let you know which is which. I'm just trying to get this all the way under here. You can get it all the way under, but boy, sometimes you don't want to pull so hard because you think the whole lot's going to come away in your hand. Crikey. Wow, I don't have any strength. Come on. Blimey. That is extremely stiff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to resort to leveling it up with some chamfered plastic, which part of another guitar. This, believe it or not, should help us to get it off by kind of... Nope, that is well and truly fixed in place, damn it. I didn't like it at all. Brittle plastic. Doesn't want to come off. So we have a broken pot, sorry, broken knob, which is a shame because they were quite cool, those knobs, but it's not wanting to come off. Well, whereas that one is. Okay, do we have the bit that came off? Because we could glue it back on. Oh, we might just. I think we're lucky enough to find that. Oh well. So, unless I can find some way of getting this little thing out. Come on. I don't want to put undue pressure on this stuff, but it's like it's glued on or something. This. I'm not too worried about the pot exactly because that can come off. But never had this much trouble getting a pot off. Oh, jeez. Right. That is off, and we can match it up with its missing bit later on. I'll put it in there for now. Blimey. Okay, doke. Yeah, unusually difficult that was. Put that over there. I'll just cut these strings off and trim them. We'll replace them all. Come along, the strings. Whole strings do not behave. They get in the way of everything. One of the hardest things in the world to dispose of. They can stick out and spring everywhere. Okay, let's get rid of these two big screwdrivers. Okay, so there's a little bit of cracking to this pick guard, so some way down in the future I might end up remaking this from a template, making a new one out of a single piece, but we'll see. It's not too bad, it's only very, very small, and I'd hate to lose it because it is original. Now all of this I'm going to take out because I want to basically rewire this, the whole works, and these pickguard screws are pretty worn at the tops, so they probably need to get disposed of as well. And there's one here that's just spinning, that doesn't want to come out very easily. Come out, yep. That one comes out. Oh, welcome to our pretty simple arrangement in here. Look at that. Two slightly naff pickups of some description. What does this say? Total guitar. Oh no, that's interesting. It's a pickup that's been jammed down the side of it probably to stop it moving. No, just got lost down the side. How about that? Bonus. Okay, so I'm going to cut these wires because I'm not going to use these again. It's almost certain that I won't use these again. I've got several others even if I wanted to, so for the time being you are snipped, my friends. And now we have the plywood cavity. God, it's really, really light. I suppose a good thing about this is there is some room to put some weight back in here if I want to end up with some additional lead or whatever in there. And while I'm at it, I'll take out the strap buttons and I'll take the neck off as well. I haven't got so much to wield. Ah, that's interesting. Well, that just sheared off straight away. Huh. Okay. Well, that solved that problem. Blimey. Let's take the neck off as we were intending to do. That is extremely stiff. Somebody screwed this on very, very tightly. Blimey. We're on full torque. That also has sheared. There we go, this is starting to get interesting. We may end up finding the same thing happening on all of these. I'm going to put a different complexion on this. Oh my god, that is so extremely over tightened, and it's sheared as well. There we go. That's history for you, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it'll just fall out with 4 bits of metal still stuck in it. We'll have to find a way of removing those. Wow, would you believe it? And that one's gone as well. Doink! I don't know whether somebody's glued these in or something. There you go, that one's broken as well. Fantastic. Out it comes with 4 lovely chunks of metal embedded in the neck of the guitar, which is going to prove to be quite some challenge, I can tell you. But hey. And then there's a shim in here as well, sitting at the back there. And then you can see it's split down there, but again we can pretty easily glue that, which isn't a problem. So okay, so just for a bit of fun, we're finding out issues with this guitar busting itself apart all over the place. So everything that's been done up tightly has been so tightly done up that it's shearing off when trying to undo it, which is not ideal. Hey, I could get this one off. Look at that. That's amazing. Wow. Like I should be grateful. So this is the price you pay when you buy old things from people. But you know, we'll find a way of restoring it. Well, I've got a bolt thingy remover, screw remover thing. I'm not sure if it will work on those sheared off sort of remnants, but we'll give it a go. Who knows? But, yeah, 1970s for you. So this would be a long-term project, really. I'm not going to be looking to get this one done in any sort of hurry, which is just as well. Pretty straightforward arrangement in there, which now comes out. We've got a wire from the bridge coming through, and that's actually grounded out on the jack socket, which is unusual. But I'll take the whole lot out and run to the mouth, hopefully, and then we'll just drop it all into the pot. That's a job lot. We can throw it on the floor as well. And we can see later on, we can then refer back to it and see how it was wired. It's a pretty simple wiring, and I like the little pointers as well, so we'll keep those. Just hold this up. It's very, very light, but I've got some lead that we can work on and just weight it down if we want to, if necessary. It felt okay the way it was. I'm not sure it absolutely needs it, but we may find that we need to, if we move the strap anchor point to gain access, then we can cure the neck heaviness by putting some extra weight in the body, bring it back to sort of how it should be. Okay. Come on. Wow. What an old thing, eh? I'm going to refret it as well, I expect, so I'll have a good look at the frets now, but it really is total ground up remake, but retaining its basic look of a 1970s SG. So the key bits that I think will work still are scratch plate, obviously the body and the neck will retain their original feel, but everything else will be new for the fun of it. So here's all the electrics dangling. I'll put all of that into the tub of horrors, and also I'll cut off the earth wire close to the near the thingy. I can try and get my mole grips, no, whatever. These wiry things. Need to get a little, that's it, a little turn on that just to get it loose, and then we can undo the little white cap on the end, and the whole lot will come out nicely. There you go. Electrics in the pot, switch parts in the pot, and then we're down to the, I'll leave that in there, there's a little shim and I'll leave it stuck in there, won't have to worry about that. So we're back to the absolute basic stripped down body, and I'm going to hang that up out of the way for the time being. We'll come back to that a little bit later. but a bit of straightforward repairing to do, maybe a bit of weighting down to do as well, but nothing mega or major. So here we have the neck with its 5 sheared off bits of metal sticking in there, and that's going to be such fun. So it's given us, immediately presented us with quite some challenge, and this is where my stud removal thing, screw removal thing, is either going to work or it isn't. I'm not sure if I need a finer one than I've got, but we shall see. Okay, this one isn't doing anything, it's just spinning. That's what you get with really old, beat up old guitars, is nothing actually kind of works the way it should. But we'll get it out eventually. Of course, the fun part will be even to find out whether the truss rod works or not. And this old bridge plastic monstrosity has got to come out because it was already split, and there's going to be quite a bit of digging work to do to get all that out. But it's worth doing because I'd want to replace it anyway. But I'll need to do some chiseling in there. And then what we've got is a good old neck with some pretty worn out frets, I think. Yeah, I think these are past saving, so we'll take these out and we'll go through the whole process of refretting, and we'll just take our time. But the point I've got to watch out for is I've got to make sure this neck is worth refretting, because otherwise we'd just be throwing time and money into something. I've done that before, more than once, and it just basically ended up with a neck with lovely frets, but that was never going to play again because it was basically knackered. So this is not going to come out unless I use something else. Okay. Horrible tuners, manky. And yeah, okay, these are just falling out, the ferrules, which is no problem. Yeah, so you can see straight away a few of the challenges that we've got. But again, it's, you know, there's no point crying over it. That's, you know, if you're going to make it play better again, then you're going to have to face all of those bits that don't work. And as far as I'm concerned, so long as they're fixable, i.e. we can get those bits of metal out of the neck down there, then in time we should be able to possibly sink or fill the holes, drill out and fill, and make some new anchor points, and then just put some new screws in there, start the process again. But it's getting the broken off bits of metal out that will be the challenge. But I haven't done it before, but I'm sure it can be done. So it's a good time to practice. Might as well do it now. And it's fun. This is a I was going to say an off-camera fun thing to do, but actually this is just a spare moments kind of guitar, and I'll be on the lookout for some pickups that would suit it. I'd like it to be something a little bit different. If we can get a good neck out of it, we can get this bit sorted, and it's worth refretting. And I need to be very honest to myself about whether it is or it isn't. If it's worth refretting, then I'd like to get some special pickups for it. Because the thing is, you can always take them out and put them in something else. You're not forced to keep them in a guitar if you don't think it's playing well enough. That's a nice thing about pickups, is they'll travel nicely. God, this thing is a cranky old piece of guitar. So get all of this off, and then we'll start from scratch bit by bit. Yeah, man. Out you come. Those ferrules and will go in the bin probably with the rest of these tuners. I mean, they're period correct, but who cares? This isn't really just about keeping everything absolutely pristine 1970s, because if it was, we wouldn't be able to improve it, so there wouldn't be much point in doing this. So it's very definitely about changing out what needs changing out. As long as the original, I mean the basics remain, they feel like they're the original guitar. Okay, so there we have it. Pickups. Again, I will take these right out, I think, because I don't want them from here on inwards. I don't want these old things. I'll keep them in the tub for now. I don't want to get them out of the way. See if there's anything I need to do to this bit of plastic here, whether it's repairable. I probably ought to get some epoxy stuff. I've forgotten the name of that stuff. 2-packy stuff, you know, that you mix this stuff together and it makes a hard plastic cement. I'll see what I can get, because I'd like to repair some of these old pickguards that don't have much in the way of cracking. It'd be a shame to just have to cut a new one and go through all that trouble when there's only a tiny crack in this one. Actually, it is so small. That's well worth fighting for. So I'm going to hang it up here, out of the way, and then I'll look for some epoxy resin stuff that might. If it was a car, I'd be thinking fiberglass, because it makes an absolutely solid fill. But it's not a car. Okay, so here we have it, the neck in all its grottiness. So we've got a sort of dark stain-looking finish on all of this. Covered with some sort of lacquer, the kind of which we don't know, so we may just be guessing at this point. I don't think there'll be anything online that's going to tell me reliably what was used on Columbus circa 1976 or 7 in Japan, but wow. Underneath the grime, it's not bad. Quite a lot of grime over the years. And then have a close-up look at this pile of steel, soft steel, I should say, that's now buried in the wood, sadly. But hey, look at that screw remover, stripped screw remover game going. We'll see what we can do. Okay, so it's all in one piece. Everything about it's goable. Be interesting to think about where I'm going to get some brown lacquer or brown stain, or I guess, I don't know, like I say, I don't really know whether I'd be using cellulose paint or something else to do this. Yeah, real muddy brown. But anyway, it isn't too bad in and of itself. There's only a few places I want to touch it up, but they do need a bit of, I suppose it's a dark mahogany kind of colour. We'll see what there is. And then if I get these frets out, then what I'll do is I'll re-radius this, hopefully re-radius this neck so that it's fresh. It's like a new, might as well go like a new fingerboard. I don't want to keep this dented fingerboard just for the sort of the fun of it, really. Okay, not perfect, but this fret's kind of sticking out as it is. So what I'll do is, while I'm here, we can play this game. Let's take out the frets while we're at it. Just one last thing before we kind of stop for the time being. I'm making a little sandwich here with my little pads, and if I use that as a just a thing to tie it down. It just stops it moving, and it means I can work with the frets without things moving around too much. So to get the frets out of this, I'm going to fire up my soldering iron. If I can disentangle it from the little jaws thing, and untangle it again from itself. You've probably heard me say more than a few times how much I hate these solid soldering iron wires, cables. They're so inflexible. I really wish that I had a rubberized one, but hey. Okay, I don't want this to bend down too much, so that's okay. So the principle of taking the frets out with a guitar like this, it will be to just slightly heat up the metal and then lift them out with a gentle action. Because I'm going to re-radius this, and I don't need to be too ridiculously careful, because if I lift up any little splints or whatever, it should be easy enough to I'll kind of get rid of them when I re-radius. So this actually it doesn't feel like a 12-inch radius. It feels actually quite more of a vintagey sort of 9.5, something like that. In fact, it is. I would say that's a 9.5 all the way down. Yeah, it's not a 7.25. That's, well, you know what? Is it not? No, 7.25 is just a bit too. It's a 9.5, which I'm going to make a note of on the board. Question next is, do I want to replace it with jumbo fret wire or medium? I've got quite a bit more of medium, so I think I'll go medium, since this is medium as well anyway, so it'll be kind of more consistent. Okay, so we got some heat coming through there, and I'm going to use this sort of back to front way. So the question was I convinced that this is worth doing? Yes, it was. There's no undue, unnecessary or horrible twists in it that worrying me. So I just put down the soldering iron on here, and it will heat up the steel, or the fret, nickel and silver or whatever it is. And then the idea is, with this pair of clippers, is to just bite and lift the first bit. And I'm going to try and do all of them like that first, and then come back and lever them out, because that first bite is actually the hardest of all, particularly with these frets, because they are stepped in away from the edge a little bit. Now when I come to replace them, my frets will go much closer to the edge of this binding. They'll obviously be inset, but there will be a overhang on the fret which leans out towards the edge of the binding. So just when I get that first little bite to get underneath the end of the fret. That's not too bad. I'll have to move it along in a minute. So this is, oh, that's not good. Now this gets quite difficult if you have a bite at it and it doesn't actually lift up the fret, then you've got a bit of a challenge when you have to try and do it again. I don't want to put too much pressure on, I just need it to stay reasonably still. Yeah, once you scuff the top of this, it gets a bit more difficult to have another bite at it. And it may be that if it gets too bad, you have to go down the other end and do it. I usually get it on the second try at the latest. You find that the soldering iron, to begin with, causes the finger grease to bubble. It's quite revolting. Any of the goo that's caught under there, it sort of goes black very quickly and bubbles. Somebody's DNA burning. Oh, no, this is now This one is resisting my charms. I'll have to push too hard on it, but yeah, just got under there. So it's a brilliant point of no return, because before long, it doesn't take very long at all to have pushed us to a place where there's no going back. You've got to refret now. I've started getting the frets out. So my experience has been that the thing that really makes a difference when you're refretting is to, it's not happening on that one, the thing that makes a difference is, once you get the fret out, is to be absolutely sure that the slot is clean. And you know, some people go to real extreme lengths of hoovering it out and blowing air into it, and you really do want to make sure the slot is clean, so it will take the next fret tang very cleanly, and it will fit in, and there won't be anything obstructing it. Because if you do get some obstruction when you're putting your next frets in, they tend to, that's what will make them sit up high, and it's possible that that causes uneven frets, which will then give you all kinds of problems. Now, this is not playing ball. Very difficult to get that first pinpoint bite without too much denting the wood around it. Okay, then what I'll do is, once I reach the end here, I'll just work back and remove them fully, unlike this one, which really doesn't want to come out at all. And the other thing I've discovered is getting the radius exactly right is really critical. If you under radius, you'll end up with the frets sitting high at the edges, and that is a really bad start point. I mean, you can make them look okay and you can round them all off and it works, but it's far from ideal, because you have to take off a fair bit of the fret at the edges to make it work, and that is not, you don't want to be starting by losing fret material unnecessarily. Kind of defeats the object of refretting, really. Okay, so I'm just now going back over, gently heating up and prising up with these special pliers as I go, and the heat is just helping to release the tang of the fret. These holes are looking pretty clean, actually. What's interesting about them is they hardly have any corrugation on the tang by the look of it, or certainly the holes aren't showing any. In fact, they don't. There's almost none. I don't know what kind of fret this is, but I mean, they are ancient. Very different from a modern fret. So this is definitely of its time, like in the old 70s. But quite easy, as you can see now, to get them out. Just a little bit more heat, and then we'll get a radius block out with some sandpaper on it, and that will be what we use to reshape this. And I'll choose a 9.5 radius block, and it will, judging by the measurement on this that I've already made, it should fit straight away. And we'll just take it down enough to freshen up the board, and where if possible remove the wear at the other end, which is from kind of sweat and pressure from the fingers. It eats away the fingerboard. It's quite corrosive, down there. So this is all coming out very willingly and very easily, actually. It's like the, I don't know if the rosewood is particularly oily or something, but it's coming out without any splits or... Oh, I missed one. Yeah, coming out without any chips coming up with it, which is good. So we'll be almost there. I'll probably leave the radiusing till tomorrow, but we'll just stop after we've got all the frets out and had a quick inspection of the slots and see if they're okay. Shouldn't be any reason why these are suffering from gunge. Sometimes I've noticed where people have used super glue, you can find that the bottom of the slot is quite full of crunchy goo, which can cause an obstruction, but these seem to be coming out very easily. Okay, 2 more and we're there. What are we going to look for? A brown stain or a brown lacquer? A brown cellulose paint. Vintage 1970s Formica colour. Okay, so there we have our 1970s Columbus neck, relieved of its old frets, and look at that, no chips or anything come out. I don't know if you can see, but there's the dimples or depressions here where the finger sweat has worn either side of the strings, and it does extend quite a bit up this guitar neck, so it'll be good to get the radius block on it and really freshen that up. We might take off a fair bit, and here go our old frets into the bin. Okay, so there we have it. That's the Columbus taken apart with a few unpleasant surprises, but nothing that we won't deal with one way or another over as a long-term project. But yeah, wow, look at that, snap right off. 5 screws, but it's not impossible. And in fact, I was just thinking, if I was completely unable to do anything with those, might have to even consider moving the screws a tiny bit, but I don't think we will need to. I think we'll find a way of getting those out, because that's really important. But yeah, there we have it. Nice old thing. I'll just chip away off camera at this stuff here just to clean that up. There's a little bit of separation historically there, but it looks like it's there from the beginning. It's just full of a bit of lacquer. It just looks a little bit iffy. And then there's a ding here that I'd like to fill so that we've got a nice smooth surface like the rest of it. Otherwise it's pretty good. Okay, see you for the next bit. Hey, hello there. Welcome to Reloved Guitars Workshop. This is Sam, and it's been a while since I've done any video. Well, a week or so maybe. Been busy writing an ebook. It's taken a bit of time, but anyway, just wanted to kind of bring this back into play, update you on this. I've jumped ahead a little bit without telling you, but don't worry. What have I done? Well, I have taken the neck off and filled any holes so that they're nice and smooth. I've removed the errant sheared off what do you want to call it, screws, leaving plugged and filled holes like this. 4 of them I've re-drilled and used to bolt on the neck again, and I've just basically replaced the bridge, cleaned the individual saddles. They're really nice little bone saddles. It's a nice touch. But excuse me, just I put those on now and a new nut in order to restring, obviously put the neck under tension. And what I'd like to do is I would like to cut the nut slots properly and just take a look at the action. And what I'm seeing right now is, even with the bridge right down on its lowest stops, the action doesn't really give me any freedom of movement. So if I'm looking at where it sits currently, on the stops we've got just on the 1.5 millimeters, which in truth is about as low as I'd want it to go anyway, but you know what, that's not quite enough adjustment room. I want a bit more. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to take the plate off again and shim the neck just slightly, so I get back a little bit more range of action, which gives me a bit of a freedom of a bit of options, or a few options. I'm going to obviously lower the action at the other end, but it's not going to make this much difference down here. So a little shim. It's already got one plastic one, but I'm going to put a little brass shim or a copper shim under here, just to raise it by about 0.5 millimeter would be good. And then I'm going to put it back under tension and then take care of, first of all, the action at this end, then the nut, and then the relief, and then action, nut, and bridge action, neck relief, and then the first fret action. Take care of all those things, and then I'm going to fret level, because these are brand new files. They're medium gauge, but they're quite tall, so I've got quite a lot of room to get a nice level. And I think to make this a really nice playing guitar, we might as well make a bit more use of the action. We don't want to be stuck to just over 1.5 millimeters. Particularly if I do a little bit of fret leveling anyway, it's going to get even bigger, fractionally, but still big enough. So much as I'd like to leave it like that, I'm going to slack the strings right off, take the neck off. Actually, what I'll do is I'll slack them off, take it off here, put it aside, capo it so they don't all come unravelled, then reset the neck with a shim, and then carry on. So I'll save you watching all that, and I'll be back with you shortly. Okay, so here we are back with the SG. Unfortunately, being a plywood guitar, it's quite bendy. Or let's put it another way, it's not the solidest, it's not like a solid chunk of wood. But let's just check these actions. So we're a little bit high on here. Let's crank them down, so we'll dial them in. I want to get down to the nice easy 1.5 at either side to begin with, and we'll just go from there. Don't want any higher than that, which this currently is. So wind it in. I've got the old tuners on here still, because obviously I'm just using them right now to do up tension the strings, but I'll take them off and change them when the new ones arrive. Okay, so we're on 1.5 on both edges. In terms of the relief, I'm just going to have a quick check, see what we've got. Yeah, we've got a little bit, not masses, but I don't know how much we really want. Let's have a look at what there is. Between 0.1 and 0.2, are we on metric? No, that's imperial. So yeah, looking for about, let's say 0.15, and on the 7th, so 1, 2, 3, no 8th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, only just. Yeah, that'll do. I'm not going to worry too much. The only time I'll worry about it is if it doesn't play well, then I'll make an adjustment. So next stage in this is to take care of the nut slots, which is quite a big deal because it's a brand new nut, so it'll take a bit of working. once we're there, it'll then feel like a different guitar altogether. There's nothing I can do to make the neck a solid neck really, short of, I don't know, trying to rebuild it with a big chunk of hardwood or something instead. But you know, it's ply, and there's only so much strength in that bit. There's only so much strength in that part on the solid hardwood neck anyway. So we're kind of stuck with what we've got. Okay, so I'm looking now for a point on metric. I'm looking for, let's say, 0.3 on these, and there's quite a lot of room there, so I'll just start cutting, and I'll move the string out of the way and just start cutting backwards. And I cut back at a sort of 10-degree kind of angle really. A little bit of movement side to side because I want the slot to be bigger than the actual gauge I'm using, so it doesn't pinch. And it's bone, so it's a nice material to cut. It cuts sort of predictably and reliably. And if by some chance I overcut it, then I can also rebuild it if I wanted to with bone dust and some very low viscosity super glue. But my preference is always to get it first time round, which is about there, without needing to resort to that. So tune up. Just getting approximately the right tension. Pitch isn't the most important thing, it's just having it at the right playing tension so that it sits firmly, the string sits firmly in the slot. Loads of room, let's work away at it. There's a risk that if you don't have it at enough tension, then the string will sort of sit somewhere halfway down and you'll think you need to cut further, and you'll keep cutting, and then suddenly, first time you put the string under proper tension, it will whiz down past the obstruction into a new trough that you didn't realise you'd cut because you thought you still had more depth to go. So getting it to sit properly in that slot is really important, and for that you need full pitch tension really. Anything else and you could be deluding yourself. Okay, we're getting there now. A little gap still. Again, cutting carefully, 10% backwards angle to make sure the string comes off the front of the nut, so it rises up the back and launches off the front. The different parts of the saw blade, or the saw, don't get used so much. They tend to be a little bit sharper. But if you're switching from side to side or from end to end, be careful because suddenly it'll start cutting quicker than you expect. Again, still a little gap under there, and I might go back and pay a bit more attention to the first one there, because I think I may have backed off too early. That's easy enough to do. So when I look down here, I can still see there's an air gap under there, and the note still plays. So getting down at its level is quite good too. But we are in that sort of place now where it's important to go quite slowly. Okay, just still playing, but just about to get choked off. So I'm just going to check again with this one visually. Yeah, a little bit more room under there. So I'm dropping back a gauge, take a little bit more, and again, just get down low, up close and personal. Yeah, you have to flatten the feeler gauge blade out sometimes to make sure you're getting a good reading. Pretty much there. Get this A back in place. Okay, now we put that one back, move on to the E. Again, get this up to tension. Measure the gap. Miles! Get going with the wide gauge one. Loads more to do. Now for these, if these slots are very deep in this nut, because it's a new nut, what I'll do is reshape the nut afterwards. So take away a load of the material, because I don't necessarily want it sitting over the top of the strings. But once you've got the slots at the right depth, you can take away as much as you like off the top to create a sort of the overall depth you want. It's the bottom depth we care about for the first fret action. After that, once we're grounded in the, once the string is at the right height on the first fret, we can do anything we like with the excess material on the top. We could shape it, round it off, smooth it. I'll just try and basically take some of the mass of it off. But as long as the strings are not binding in any way and they're at the right height, you don't really need to do anything. If you like the sort of nice squareness of the nut, then just leave it and make sure it's got enough what's the word, graphite in there to lubricate it. Okay, this now tells me I could use a bit more neck relief, but for the time being we've still got clearance over here, so I'm going to carry on down a little bit more. Still fresh air. So this is, remember, a refretted neck, so it's got new frets that we've done a basic level to them. I've since added, removed and replaced 2 in total because I didn't like the way they were sitting. That's good. Stop there. So there are a couple that are higher, and I need to just I can see which one, well, one of them particularly is this one. It's a little bit higher because it's new. But all I need to do is make sure that I concentrate on making sure that one gets down to the right level, and we'll be fine. So here we go with the G. Now I'm going to get these 3 out of the way and start with the G slot. Because typically at this stage I'd be using, normally I would be using the strings that came with the guitar to do this. So I wouldn't mind the fact that they're under stress and I'm going to throw them away later. So I'll do the same with these, only I put them on fresh this morning to do this, but not this afternoon. But normally it would be using the strings that the guitar came with, which are usually dirty and worn out, which is fine, because then they just serve the purpose for getting the action and the nut slots right, and then when all that's done and it's ready to pretty much ready to clean up and play, then all that remains is to ditch them, put new ones on, and we're kind of into the last bit, and then there'll be intonation to do. Now this guitar is obviously a different kettle of fish because we've got different pickups and things to put in there. Okay, so that's nice and low. I'm going to stop there, move to the next one, and just make sure the tuning's roughly right. I want it under decent tension. Again, working to the 0.3 here, and been sort of trying to, well, writing about that a fair bit, this business of the heights and why it's so important to get these really good and really the right heights. And I can see a lot of manufacturers that keep saying, or keep recommending 0.5 millimeter over the first fret, and I'd like to go along with that, but it's been my experience so far that very often anywhere above 0.5, and what happens is you get the intonation problems start to creep in, because the force or the pressure required to fret the notes tends to build up to a point when it's that high and higher, where the notes start to become sharp as soon as you fret them. Almost there. Yeah, they're a little bit sharp when you fret them. So, and it completely, well, not completely. At a 0.5, it tends to slightly detune open chords. And that's not strictly true. It sharps the fretted notes, whilst the open notes remain true to tune, or true to pitch, or whatever you want to call it. But and the combination of, let's say on a D, 3 fretted notes and 3 open notes sounds horrible. And anything above 0.5, I found that starts to be noticeable. So I tend to go on this basis, that my experiments showed me that the capo will reduce your first fret action anywhere you put it to about 0.1. So I figured, if the upper limit that I get nervous about is 0.5, if the lower limit the capo likes is 0.1, I'll go somewhere in the middle, 0.3. And 0.3 tends to work out quite nicely. So that's the logic. If you like, it's conservative. I could go even lower, but there isn't any need. At 0.3 it tends to work really well, I found anyway. Now I'm using the 0.13 again, effectively the B string here again, because I just don't like doing it with the finer one. It just tends to get a little bit sticky. And one of the things I've discovered as well over time is that in sort of, if you create a sort of weighting order, priority order of the things that have the biggest impact on whether or not a guitar is enjoyable to play, probably the first one of all, before even the action, is the fact that the guitar won't stay in tune. You could have quite a high action guitar that stays beautifully in tune when you play it. That's a joy, it's fun to play. You might wish it was a little bit easier, or the action was a little bit lower. But because it's beautifully intonated or in tune, and the tuning doesn't slip or whatever, you will enjoy playing it. The other way round is not true. If you have a beautiful action on your guitar, but the damn thing will not sound in tune or stay in tune, whichever, and I make an important distinction there. It's a mixture of actually not being in tune when you actually play it, for the reasons I kind of just mentioned, when you press notes sharp, a combination of that and actually going out of tune, so there's something detuning it when you start to play it. So you can have a guitar that has the most beautiful action in the world, theoretically, and if it won't stay in tune when you're playing it, you might as well not be playing it. So what I kind of came to the conclusion that of the sort of what I call fatal flaws, I suppose, is going out of tune or playing out of tune is probably the number one. I could pay £1,000 for a guitar. If it won't play or stay in tune, I might as well put it on a bonfire, because it's unplayable. And so from that point onwards, what I started to see was that there are two primary contributors to the guitar not playing stroke staying in tune. One of them is to do with, well, three actually, let's call it three. One of them, the primary one, principal one, number one on the hit list, is unreleased slack in the strings, which stays in there for, can be months sometimes. Second one is the over too high a first fret action, which makes it sound, or makes it play out of tune because the intonation's wrong. And the third one is badly cut nut slots in terms of width and stickiness, so that they go out of tune because the slots pinch the note, pinch the string and hold it, and then when you bend the string it releases it because it's now got enough tension to pull it back through, and that, believe it or not, is enough to put the guitar out of tune. So those three things, all those three things, those three, ooh, yeah, all those culprits get in the way, and they're not really, people don't really think about it that way. Most people think the tuners have something to do with it. I guarantee you this guitar I could leave these tuners on, apart from the fact that the holes, two of the holes filled with stripped out screws. I don't know why, it seems like something about plywood seems to hold screws and cause them to strip very easily, or shear. But anyway, I could keep these tuners on, and I promise you, once I've got this right, which I'm getting there, and once I've taken all the slack out of the final set of strings I put on here when I've got it loaded up with electrics and so on, I promise you this will play in tune. And it has nothing to do with tuners, and that's just amazing. I know there's a guy you may love or you may hate, a guy called Scott Grove. He does groovy guitar lessons or something, and he's very opinionated, and he is Marmite, as the British would say. You either love him or you hate him. And I don't mind his personal characteristic, but I do totally respect the what he talks about. And he also says his conclusion is that the tuners have nothing to do with the way the guitar staying in tune, and he's absolutely right in my experience. Now, what I will change out tuners for is because I like a high ratio. So if you get an expensive tuner, you might get 18:1 or more, which makes your tuning very delicate operation. It's very sensitive and very positive. So you turn quite a lot to get very little movement, and it gives you nice fine control of where you set the tuning of that string. But that's it. It's how they look. You might find them, you change them because they match the guitar's aesthetic, and they may feel smoother to operate, and they may be more effective to operate because they don't have any notchy bits or there's no cogs missing or whatever, the quality parts. But they are as the cheaper tuners like these on here are as unlikely to wind backwards and make the guitar out of tune as the expensive tuners you might spend loads of money on. So the tuner itself, geared tuners do not wind backwards and go out of tune. Even if you bend a note really hard, when it goes out of tune, or when you do your tremolo and it goes out of tune, it's not the tuner moving, and you can't blame it on cheap tuners. When it goes out of tune, it's because, oops, get that back on. When it goes out of tune, it's because either there's still slack somewhere in here, and as soon as you bend it, the slack comes out and it's out of tune, or it's caught in the nut because the slots are too tight, or it's because your first fret action is too high, and when you press down here it's going out of tune. So that's the amazing thing. You never have to buy tuners. Take them apart. Take them apart and you'll find that your expensive tuners are just a cog the same way as these are. Now, what I'm doing is putting it under full playing tension. Roughly. Okay, so there's our lovely low action now. It's suddenly become quite a nice guitar, even though, as I say, it's slightly bendy in the neck because of the nature of the plywood. But in terms of easiness of that action and the way it looks, I think this is still going to turn out to be very nice. So, stage now is the famous fret leveling stage using the so-called banana. Oh, this is a different one. Oh, shall I use it? Oh, I haven't used this one before. This one a bit stiffer. It's got quite a chunkier bar. Let's try this one for a change. I might need the Allen key to make this one work, but hey, it's all new and wonderful. In fact, I haven't used this one before in action, and the reason I took it out of its plastic sheath and put sandpaper on it was because I was taking some photographs to show how to make one of these. That will be in the ebook that I'm putting out at some point whenever I get the graphic design part done. It's probably going to be me that does it, but I was just looking out for one or two quotes, and they seem to have been quite high. So since I've got the software myself, and since I've done things and designed things before, I probably will just carry on. Anyway, so this is a new one, and that's what I'm looking for, is an Allen key. So I call it, in the ebook, I call this Morris's Banana, and actually this one feels a little bit more solid than the other one. So what is this? This is a truss rod from a bog standard guitar, and a truss rod is a great invention. It's very simple. You've got two pieces, or a few pieces of metal, but what you've got first of all is a rod, this top piece, with a screw thread on the top end which you can turn in, and that effectively shortens the rod. It pulls the top bit closer to the end here. But welded to this movable bit, and also welded to the other end, is a bar, a flat bar, upon which we put the sandpaper. And all that means is, and this is how the truss rod works, is when you crank this bit here, it pulls the two ends of the bar effectively, it shortens the rod, but because the bar can't shorten, the bar has to bend. So the rod gets shorter, but the bar bows outwards, and that's how we bend the truss rod. And I know you probably see quite easily down there when I give it a bit of a twist. That's some bend. Now we're not going to be working with anything near that kind of bend. If I take all the pressure off it, this is pretty good. It straightens out. I'm very impressed with this one. It might be my new #1 Morris Banana. But anyway, you take the pressure off the screw bit at the end here, it goes flat. So why have we even talking about this? Well, because this is the way I level frets, and the guitar has some curve in it, not an awful lot. It's very little relief. I'm just going to, now we've got it under pressure, I'm just going to capo it off again and just double check the physical relief. It's not too bad. It's about 0.1. I'm going to leave it at that, which means there is a slight curve. You can hardly see it, but there's a very, very slight curve. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to level the frets with the strings on, because I want the neck not only curved slightly. I don't really care about the curve particularly. What I want is the neck in the condition it is when you're playing it, and that happens to be slightly curved, but it also happens to be compressed in that way. And if I can level the frets now with it in this position, I know that they'll be as level as they possibly can be when the strings are on it and the electrics are in and I'm playing it. All right? If I do it by taking the neck off, flattening it out, and using a leveling beam such as this thing here, which is just a homemade one, but I could flatten the neck out and use a dead straight flat thing like this. And you know, if you're doing that, you're flattening out frets on a flat thing. That's great. You get even frets. The problem is that you have leveled without the compression effects taking place, and as soon as you put the neck into tension, it's also compressing, which means that the things that were level when you did it flat passively suddenly no longer keep the same relative level with that curve, and what happens is that they behave slightly differently. It's a bit hard to get your head around at first, but once you try it and do it, it really does make sense. So what that means is, for me, is if I level this, if I level this with a curve already in it, but particularly with the compression in, I can take the strings off, the neck will flatten out a little bit, that's fine. I'll do stuff, I'll put the electrics in, I'll fiddle all the buttons and knobs and wiring or whatever. When I come to reload it with the same gauge strings, it'll go exactly back into the configuration it was when we leveled it, which means that the strings will be the frets will be absolutely level with each other. Okay, that's the theory, and it don't have to try and make sense of it too much if you can't get your head around it, because it just does work. That's all you need to know. So how do I do it? Well, how do I level frets on a curve? For a long time, that struck me as just impossible. I thought, you know, it's nonsense. You couldn't do it. And then I saw a tool that basically did the same as this, a bit more expensive, $140 worth, but I made my own in the end. And all that tool was a very elegant and inspiring thing. It curved. It was basically a kind of truss rod in a little box, but the principle was the same as this. It curved the tool, and the fret leveling tool, then you matched it to the exact curve of the neck, and then you leveled your frets, and then you that was it. Then you re-profiled them so that they were nice and rounded, and then you polished them off and you're ready to go. So that's what we've got this for. The banana is for just that. And how, this is the fun bit, how do you map a curve in that tool? How do you copy the curve of this neck onto that tool? And you do it by these three little feet. And these feet, by the way, it's in the ebook when it comes out, but these feet are little brass domed nuts. And what you want to do is you want to place them as far apart as you can, but given that your truss rod doesn't quite reach every fret if you have a short one. If you get a bass guitar one, it probably does, funnily enough, but I haven't yet gone and spent money or taken a bass apart. So all I'm looking to do is to make sure that these things are kind of equally spread apart on the guitar neck. And what I might actually do is bring that back one and one and just to recheck it. So start off with these pretty much equidistant on the neck. And here's the fun bit. With the thing slacked and therefore as flat as possible, I'm placing it down on the first one, and I always hold my left hand one as an anchor point, and then I bring it down on the other two. Okay, and I'm waiting to see, this is interesting. Now it's telling me that the relief on that side of the neck is non-existent, and it's right. You know, there's two different amounts of relief in this neck. So with the relief non-existent on that side, it's going to make it hard to play. So we've already it's just encountered an interesting thing that's quite common in a lot of guitars that I've looked at. You often get a different relief on this side of the neck than on this side. It's telling me that on this side there is almost no relief at all, while on this side there's a tiny bit. I'm going to set for somewhere in between, because I don't want to play on that edge and find that the notes are hitting the frets and buzzing and zinging and so on. So I'm going to adjust it and get the right. No, I'm not going to get the right Allen key at this rate. I'm going to adjust. My lordy, Japanese made. I think we're looking imperial troops. So let's have a look what we're going to need. Yeah, so point is I'm going to adjust for a sort of middle, somewhere between the two. It's made for a short edged thingy. That's not the right word. A short headed Allen key. So that's a little bit of a challenge as well. So let me go and try and find if we've got something here that will do the job. What are these? Are these millimeters? They are again, but I'll do. No, those won't work. Those probably won't work. Let's try one. Aha, shorter ones. Please, please, please. Let's just find one that works that's short. Oh yeah, we got there. Okay, so clockwise, we'll straighten the neck out, which we don't want. We want the neck to slacken off so that the strings can pull a bit of curve into it. So I've just slacked it off, and there isn't much more to go on that, I'm afraid. That's your lot. So there we have it. Classic old guitar conundrum. Almost zero, very little relief. Very little relief. And very little relief. Very little relief, and no likelihood of getting any more. That's the problem. Unless you put a heavier gauge of strings on. So, point being is whether we've got any measurable curvature over this side. We still need to level the frets, so we're going to need a flat leveling file, which this has a slight, even in rest, this has a very, very, very fine curve in it. I'm going to just start with that. So let's just double check it. My impression of it was just that it sits almost dead flat. Yeah, it's touching all three bits, so I'm going to use it in completely flat mode and we'll see how it plays. If it doesn't play any further, then we have to make a decision on this guitar whether it's worth investing any more in if the neck is not responsive. It's quite common in these old things that they don't really do much in terms of responding to truss rod, sadly, but for 35, 40 years old. So this might be a sort of mid-range thing. I'll get it to play nicely, put some half decent pickups in it, rewire it, and we're kind of a semi-AristoCat, but it might not be top of the line. But let's see. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the E string and just drop it over the edge, and with my little plastic thing here I'm going to just spread the strings out of the way, because what I want to do, in fact I don't necessarily have to do that, I can drop the thing off the saddle as well. It puts the string under a bit of pressure, but it gives me a bit more room. So now I've put the leveling file down on top of here, and I think I've got fairly aggressive sandpaper on here, so it's going to work away at this pretty quickly. I can see a new fret that I put on, and as expected it's taking that one off quicker than all the others, but I completely expect that to happen, so I'm just going to let this work away on that one first, really, and that will take it down, bring it level with all the others, and we'll start to see the others start to, they're now picking up, they're starting to cut up a little bit, and they're also cutting in the middle, so it is perfectly flat at the moment, and I can just keep going a little bit until I've got that really high one taken care of, and the ones around it are starting to get a little bit of sanding here as well. I've got a few high ones right at the top end, so it's what you expect when you've just put in fresh frets yourself. They're never going to be perfectly level. There's no technique in the world that will get them to sit in immediately level. But here is the first kind of working. So you can see straight away it's cutting here, quite a bit here and here, touching here, quite a bit here, a little bit there, a lot there, a fair bit there, none there, and quite a bit on those three. So it's working across the whole range of the neck, which tells us that we've got the right curve, or we match the curve, or flatness in this case, accurately. What I'm interested in doing, because I use this method and the strings are on, at that point you can always kind of get them back into the saddle. Sounds like John Wayne, but get back into the saddle and just try them. So that's not bad. Don't see any real problems there. So right away we've got to a good place with that one. I'm just going to do a tiny fraction more. If you've got tons of metal on your frets, you can, if you like to, you can technically keep going until all the frets have been cut a little bit, which will give you a sort of better or more greater guarantee that you've got them all level, because once they're all cutting, you know that you've taken all the high ones down and everything's been caught. Currently, while there are still some ones with the black marker pen on that haven't been touched, they're technically still lower than the ones either side. Now you heard that at the action I've chosen, I can tolerate that because the unevenness that represents is still below the level of the action I've chosen. That's the important bit. But if you like to be a purist and you think you've got loads of material, you can just keep going if you want to until you get all of them black, which will tell you that you've got down to a really precise level. But you don't need to. You only need to get it as level as the playing action you've chosen requires to play cleanly. Anything else beyond that is a sort of it's abstract, really. You're just saying I've got 100% leveling for the sake of it. You don't need it for the action we've chosen. I'm just making sure this plays really nicely and cleanly, and then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to leave some of those black. That's fine by me, as long as it plays and I know that it's going to play nicely at the end. I'm happy with that. I suspect that's fine. That's really, this is going to actually turn out to be probably the best lowest playing guitar or feel like the less playing guitar than anything, partly because I have no choice but to do it really flat. Don't normally like to do it flat, and we may find we get a little bit of bzzz at this end because there isn't enough relief, or as much relief as I'd like for that skipping rope effect, you know, where the string describes a bigger circle in the middle than it does at the ends. So technically you do need some relief, and we're going to have to get away with what little relief there is there. We don't have any further choice. I could fake it by putting an extra curve in more curve in the tool than there is in the actual neck. That I don't want to do that, because that will end up sort of carving out a little sort of impression here, so you'll have more metal on the frets either end. I want to do it just the way the neck suggests right now, and if it plays okay, I'm going to call it quits. If it doesn't play okay, I'll reconsider, and I may not invest much more time in it. Anyway, it's going well so far. So we've done the first strip, if you like, the E strip, and we started in the E to B slot to measure our curve. So I'm going to move to the B to G slot, and I'm going to put these things back. Now, if you're going to do this, I didn't do it first time, but get yourself 3 little bits of tape standing by. And when you've picked your midpoint, or your 3 thingies in the right place, instead of doing it every time like I've just had to do, just mark kind of with the edge of your tape, mark where the point, make the edge of the tape just point to where the brass nut should sit, in which fret. So there you go, I've got 3 pointers, and next time I can just put them back there quickly. Now the reason I'm putting them there at all is, is I want to bash them with a truss rod. No, the reason I'm putting them there is I want to retune this file now, if needs be. Now I'm just holding it, and I'm feeling, it's very hard to describe how to use this thing. It's very simple in a way, hard to describe. If I put it down, I'm holding this end as the kind of fulcrum. If I put it down and this touches first, then the tool is more curved than the neck. If I put it down and this touches first and leaves a gap there, then the neck is more curved than the tool. Okay, it's really simple, and with these 3 points I can describe perfectly the curve that we're dealing with. Now in this case it's still hitting all 3 at the same time, so we haven't run into any significant curvature yet that we need to twist the tool for. But I want to do the B slot now, so I'm going to lift the B out of the way and put it into the E hole, excuse the expression. I'm going to also pull the B string off the saddle, and I'm just going to use the string spacer to give me that extra little bit of room. So now I've got a clear run down the B channel, and I'm going to, again, this is quite a heavy little truss rod, so I'm going to let gravity pretty much do the work, and I'm just going to carry on what we started in the first slice across the neck. So you can see that because we're using a thin tool, if we're doing it in a series of little bites across the neck, that means it's going to kind of respect the radius, the curvature of the neck. If we did it in just one big tool and we flattened out with a you know, something flat like this, and we had some abrasive paper, sandpaper on here, and we went, then all we've got is a flat set of strings, and underneath there's a wooden neck that goes like that. It won't be ideal. So doing it with this thin tool, we also respect the radius of the neck. And that's quite interesting, because most of the tools that you can buy, perfectly good tools in many ways, do the job. But the more I've done this, the more surprised I am how thick that is. That really will, you probably do 3 slices. So you're kind of, you know, you're chopping the curve into 3 big flat slices. That's not, I don't think that's very subtle, but it works. I've done it, but I think this gives a little bit of extra finesse to it. There you go. That's just my experience, having used this for quite a lot of setups now. So I'm expecting, again on this run, on the B stretch, I'm expecting to find that the frets that were significantly high before, I'm kind of expecting that to be the case, although it's not. It doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. Quite often the unevenness of a single fret will change as it comes over here. It may be hammered in better or pressed in better at this end slightly, in which case it stops being high when you get over here and it levels out. So don't assume that because it's cutting here you've got to keep going until it cuts all the way across. Physics will take care of it for you. You just need to get it going. Don't force it. Use gravity and the abrasiveness of the paper, and then at a certain point do what we did before, which is stop and give it a try. And that's the beauty of this method. If you're doing a passive leveling with the neck off, although I think I've described in the ebook, that makes, if let's say that gave you, let's say when you leveled the neck off flat and you did it with your radius block, for example, covered in sandpaper, like something like this. Let's say you used your radius block and you had it flat off the guitar and it was nice and flat. You checked it with your ruler and you just went and matched the radius to that, and you got a nice level and all the frets were touched. And you can say, right, get your little level checker out, and it was all level. That would be, why was I describing that? That's useful, except when you put this back under compression, if that was 100% accurate while the neck was flat, and you'd be right saying, providing you'd cut all the frets and you'd taken the high ones down, you could safely say that my frets, whilst lying passively, neck off on the deck, my frets are 100% level. Problem is then, when you put the neck back on, put it under load, and the compression effects come into play, which weren't in play when you leveled it, then that 100% probably goes, let's say, just I'm making the numbers up, but let's say for argument it goes down to 90% accurate. Now 90% level is better than the 20% you had before. So absolutely, if that's the way you want to do it, take your neck off, level it passively, get the radius block and impose a nice even radius across it. You'll lose quite a bit of material that way, but that's fine if you want to do it. And when you put it all back on, you'll go from 20% efficiency and a crap action to 90% and a really nice action. So I did that, exactly that, for a year, and it was great, and it will still be great if you do it. The way I describe this is that because it's so much more subtle and takes longer, what we're doing is we're starting at 100 and maybe getting to 98 by the time we've finished. So it's much closer. But what I'm trying to say is that doing it flat and passively gets you that much, and then doing it this way gets you that last little bit, right? So great to do it that way, but if you want that last little extra finesse, do it this way. So I'm not knocking the other way, by the way, because I did it that way for a year and my setups were just fine, thank you. Right, just as a thing, same old thing, we put the string back in. So you see, to me that is a clean set of notes all the way up the neck. There's nothing wrong there, we've leveled it enough. Yes, there are some frets still untouched. No, I'm not going to take the metal away and off the other ones to just get down to them. If I were to lower the action further, then it would be a problem, because once the action goes down further, then the unevenness of the frets comes into play again, right? But for now, we've leveled them enough for the action that we've chosen, and that's brilliant. So why chuck away the life of the frets for an abstract idea of levelness? It's the practical level that we're looking for. Right, move on to the next little strip. I know where to put the things now because I've put my bit of masking tape there. This time I'm going to just lay it down again. Now I can start to feel now it's starting to hit the my right hand side harder than it's sitting in the middle. In fact, I could almost say it's just starting to skid over the top of the middle one, which means if the truss rod doesn't touch the middle one, it means the curve in the neck is deeper than the curve in my truss rod. So I'm going to, by hand, turn a little bit of curve into the truss rod, and I'm just doing it by finger power. I haven't used the Allen key or anything. It's that sensitive. So I'll try it again, and now it's moving the middle one, and it's still a little bit more on this end still, but it's definitely hitting both of them now. So I am going to take that as my start point for the middle track. Oh, I heard someone out there. Right, I'm going to take that as a start point for the middle track, and I'm going to take the G string out here gently, drop it into the B, take it gently off its saddle, this end, and use the plastic spreader, and it's just a piece of plastic, doesn't really matter what it is. And now I'm going to work on the G track as well. So again, same principle, if I hold it at all, I'm just holding it to keep it central to the track, but I want to move it sort of side to side a little bit because I don't just want to do an actually precise little strip. I want to cover the gap, broadly speaking, between those two strings as they're sitting there right now. And again, I'm seeing the high one taking some of the metal off, which is no surprise, but actually I'm seeing a new one. A couple of these now are showing us higher in the middle than they were at the edges, so I'm taking a bit more off this edge here, taking some off this one right in the middle here too, and some at the end. So again, just to reiterate, if I'm taking from here, here and here, then I know I've matched the curve well. If I'm taking only from the ends, I suspect that I've not got enough curve in the tool, and if I'm only taking, or taking mostly from the middle part of the neck, then I've probably got too much bend in the tool itself. So there was a brilliant I get some comments on YouTube which make me smile sometimes, and I keep getting comments where, or occasionally get comments where somebody will look at what I'm doing now and they'll say, something like, "Oh, you were using that tool too hard," So it'll come from here into the GoPro camera, up to YouTube, and then sitting at home, whatever condition they're in, they'll say it doesn't look right to them, and very often they'll say it in respect of a guitar that, well, for always, by the time they have that opinion, the guitar will have gone back to its owner. And people keep saying it on guitars that that have gone back to the owners and the owners love. And in fact, I try to explain that it doesn't really matter what it looks like to you. If you don't get from watching this that when I'm doing this I know what I'm doing it for. If you don't understand that, then you might, I can understand you're going to just sit there and be critical of it, right? But please try and understand that if I'm doing this way, it's only because it produces the results every time. This isn't the first time I've done this. This is about the 30th or 40th time I've done this in this method, right? And each time it produces great results. So, it's crazy that somebody sits at home and has a view that from where they're sitting, they think it looks like I'm pressing too hard. And yet, by the time they've written it, the guitar is playing beautifully, it's gone back to its owner, and I've got a piece of feedback that says absolutely unbelievable. And in fact, the funny bit was happened the other day when, well, I'm just going to test this strip out now. We're on the G. The funny bit was, there's a video. A little bit more on this. I have a video of me doing a 1980s Japanese, beautiful Japanese acoustic guitar from a manufacturer called Dion, and the guitar was brought to me by a guy called Hugh, who's a professional musician and owns a lot of guitars, and brought it to me for a refret. Now in total I've done about 5 or 6 of his guitars in over a period of time, and refretted 2 of them and set up 5 in total. And the 2 three I've refretted actually, and done about 5 or 6. The 3 I refretted were all vintage, beautiful Electra guitars, 2 Electras and 1 Dion. Anyway, the point being, and they were all really challenging. You might have seen the video. If you have, you'll know. I have to kind of get right up into the top parts. They're fixed neck electrics, or they were glued neck semi-acoustic. So getting to those top frets to put the frets on is quite a complex thing. You have to use clamps and sort of homemade rigs and jigs and whatever. Anyway, the point being is that this is a video of me setting up this Dion, refretting it, putting a new nut on. Did I put a new? Yeah, but a brass nut on. Just retweaking, fixing the bridge where it had broken, worn away. So I fixed it exactly to the kind of shape it should have been, and it was a brass bridge, but I used some solder. Not ideal, but it's a temporary repair, given that the only other way of doing it would have been to have cast another piece from some other metal. Anyway, the point being is there's about 5 hours of this video showing every step of this refret and kind of bridge rebuild and you name it, setup and getting this guitar playing again, and documented every bit of it. And at the bottom of the page of comments, Hugh himself came on, I don't know, a couple of months after I'd given it back to him, and he came on and made a comment saying it's gorgeous, it plays better, looks better, plays better, and sounds better than it ever played before, which is great. And I knew he was happy with it at the time. But anyway, so somebody comes on and starts off going, I've just wasted 5 hours. You know, you did all this, and then you didn't use a tuner to check all the notes. You know, up and down the neck. You know, how do we know anything about? How do we know it worked out? It's a waste of my time. So the thing I said was, well, first of all, down the page there's the owner who says it worked out. So that's my yardstick. I have to tell you, whether you think it worked out or not, it doesn't matter. No offence, but if the owner's happy with it, that's, you know, it's a business. That's what I'm doing it for. So the guy was really pissed off, and you know, I said, well, the owner down the comments has said he's absolutely thrilled with it, and you know, so as far as I'm concerned, it's a success. But he kept on going on about the intonation, how I didn't test every note to see they're all in tune. And I sort of thought about it a bit, and I went back to him and I said, well, look, the intonation, because he said you reshaped or reprofiled, cleaned up the fingerboard with a radius block, you refretted, you put a new nut on, and you fixed the bridge, and changed the action. And he said, well, you know, surely that changes the intonation. And actually, if you think about it, the intonation is about the length between the nut edge and the saddle edge. Okay, now, yes, if somehow the neck had got longer, then the intonation would change. Or if I'd cut a centimetre off or 5mm off the top of the guitar and pushed the nut closer, of course the intonation would have changed. Or if I'd taken the frets off and put them back in a different place, the intonation would be all wrong. The point is, somebody's been critical, saying, you've done all that stuff, but surely why didn't you check all the notes? Well, all the notes are exactly the same as they were before, because I haven't changed anything to do with the length of the string. And this guy, to be, you know, honest, just went on a bit about it, and it's just ridiculous when, you know, demonstrating that he doesn't know what affects the intonation. It's funny how people get very tied up in it, hung up on it, you know, and they continue to argue the point, and get really vexed about it. And I left a couple more sort of comments just trying to politely explain that unless I'd moved done something to change the precise length between these 2 points, then nothing's going to change the intonation. The only thing that does change the intonation, as I go on about all the time, but he wouldn't know about, is if this action down here on the first fret was too high, which of course isn't the case, because if anything I improved it when I recut the nut, the new nut for the guitar. But anyway, so it's just one of those examples, and it kind of makes me, used to really annoy me. Now it just makes me smile that people are at home convinced that they know the right way of doing something. It's all great. If you've got a better way, I don't mind that. I've said that loads of times. That's brilliant. But to come on to a YouTube thing and to tell somebody that the way they've done it is wrong, when that somebody has given the guitar back to somebody who's then written a piece of feedback saying how fantastically it plays, it just seems a bit silly. These are buzzing a little bit, but these are, I'm going to do a tiny bit more in that track, and then I'm going to move on, because I don't want to spend, I don't want to spend too long in there. It always gets a bit nervous if it's going too long in one track. I think what I will do is, while I'm here, I'm just going to recheck. If you ever do this, I advise you, if you ever find yourself thinking, something's wrong, it's taking a bit long to get this one to play right, go back to your setting and just recalibrate. Make sure that this thing is what you think it is, that you've got the curve you think you've got. Over tighten if you have to, and then watch what happens. Is it still good? It's still good. That's a bit more in the middle. I'm going to back off a tiny bit. That's that's still good. So I just fractionally recalibrated because I want to get this right, and I'm not sure it's quite there yet. Anyway, so yeah, I guess the whole thing I'm saying this for is that whatever you think about this method, with all due respect and friendship across the airwaves and all that, it doesn't really matter. It works, right? That's why I keep doing it. I'm not stupid. I keep doing it because it works, right? So if you have a feeling that it's, wow, that's surprising, or that can't be possible, or, oh, couldn't you be doing that a better way? By all means, share that and say it. But don't, you know, pity the people who have to get on and say, it's wrong, it doesn't work. Well, it does work. It does work. And it works better than any of the other methods that I've ever tried. So you might not like it, or you might be surprised by it. That's fine. I was when I first saw this method. I just thought it's impossible. Don't be ridiculous. You can't level frets with a curved neck. What the hell? You'll end up kind of carving the edges flat. That's what I thought. And then I saw this particular tool that showed me, of course, it was possible. And then the next thing, that's good. So the next thing that came, the next question in my head was, okay, well, I tried this tool out and I thought, wow, hang on, I get it, I tried it, and it suddenly made sense. And then I thought, but why is it better than doing it flat? And then I learned something I didn't know, which was about this thing, about the compression. And then when I finally learned that, that as well made sense. It was like, okay, I can get that there is something happening. I can't describe what it is, but something about these two parts being pushed together, which isn't the case when you nicely flatten it out under passive conditions. And I worked it out in my head, made sense of it, and it said, well, if you flatten it, if you level the frets while it's passively flat on the deck, you get level frets. But that compression may do something when you put it back under tension under the strings, and if it does do something, then the relative levelness you got when it was flat but had no compression could be thrown out, and it is thrown out by a small percentage, right? And when I got that, it made sense. Okay, so I'm going to now reach in for the next line. And that feels quite good. Still on. Yeah, so, you know, it's all about making sense of information. And that's the part about this I like. But, you know, it's amazing how people come onto your videos or something, and they treat you as if you, maybe they treat you the way they do things. If they do things because they assume somebody told them that's the right way to do it. I do things because I've worked out it's the way I think works best. And to have somebody come onto your videos and tell you that the way that you've demonstrated to yourself works best is wrong is silly, particularly when you've got all that evidence kind of looking you in the face that says it works. So it's a funny old world, isn't it? Funny. Really weird. Probably funny, peculiar. Anyway, so I am now on the sort of further side of this little journey. Now the pattern of cut has changed, and for some of them stayed the same for others. It's cutting all the way across, which is great, which means I've got the curve mapped correctly. Cutting quite a bit up here, which is often the case. Sometimes these can be, for some reason, these often cannot sit in correctly. But it can also be that they when they're seated properly under the fret press, but actually when this thing is held in place by the neck bolts and the curve is in the rest of it, these tend to sit up proud, and which is why when people don't do fret leveling this way but do it the other way, they sometimes cater for that by shaving a sort of ski slope from this point onwards. But in a sense, this bit is doing it. It's taking the curve, is forcing itself into this top end here, and that answers a question I think Jim, was it Jim? Yeah, I think it was Jim, asked me a while back about, you know, how does this method cater for that slightly flat plateau that you get mostly, actually more often on glued neck guitars, but certainly you know, showing up on this one a little bit. And I think that's the answer, is that the curve kind of cuts itself in two, and it's small enough that it's able to do that without taking too much, but you can see it's taking some material off here. Anyway, that's for you, Jim, sort of practical demonstration of it. And Jim's question was, if it, was there ever a time that it got so bad that I couldn't level it using this method, and I haven't found that yet. As you can see. So that plays. I mean, acoustically it's not the greatest sounding thing because it's a plywood guitar, but there we go. So I'm going to yes, I'm going to retune. I'm going to retune for the last slice now. Recalibrate for the last slice, and then I'll use that for this strip and the one this side of the string, this side of the E string. Okay, it feels just about right. There is the right curvature still in there, so I'm not going to worry. I'm going to pull this out of the way into the E slot. Lift this one out of the way and then spread it with the string to give me the access to that slot. And then we're on the kind of home stretch now with this one. We're effectively we're leveling the A strip now, the channel where the A string goes. Yeah. People, hey, people. So yeah, the thing about anything is, if you do something consciously, you do it for a reason, then hopefully you'll do it because you've experimented and you've put some time into thinking it through and choosing the best options. Having done a whole load of research to make sure you know what you're doing and that your decisions are informed decisions. I suppose it's when people comment online and make sort of silly statements like that, I think one of the things that's a bit annoying, can feel annoying, is the assumption that you just didn't, or they're just ignoring the fact that you've come to an informed decision, and as if you would make decisions just willy-nilly because you read it in a forum or you had some belief system that told you it was the right way to do it. A little bit zinging there, so a bit more work there. Yeah. I guess the other thing is that people who make the comment, they see a video, maybe one video in isolation, and they don't, perhaps it's understandable that they don't know that if I'm doing this today, this is maybe the 200th setup I've done, maybe more. Probably the 100th I've done this way, or maybe 75 I've done this technique. Learning every single one of them, feeling what's going on, learning with that kind of tactile sensory thing of knowing when these things are mapping the curve and all that sort of stuff, and how far to go and when to stop and blah blah blah. All of that. That's a hell of a lot of practical experience, and it's only ever increasing. So when somebody comes on and tells you in their perspective, their point of view is you're doing something wrong, you have to sometimes kind of remind them, and it feels a bit patronising to say, you do realise I've been doing this for 200 times and it's working better and better. And so with that in mind, please don't be too offended if I ignore your advice. I've got this amount of evidence versus your opinion. Ding, that'll do. And we're into the final bit now. Just drop this E off the end and off the end of here. Use the spreader for the last bit. And I'm going to use the same shape or the same curve, and we're now on the home stretch. And again, we won't assume that it's right. We'll do some cutting and then we'll do a test playing the note. Now, having gone through this, even though the guitar doesn't have the relief in the neck that I would ideally want, I'm hoping that it will play well and if it does, then it's going to be worth carrying on, putting some nice looking tuners on, putting some pickups in. To begin with, I'm toying with the idea of just giving it a go with some Wilkinson tuners that I've got in another body, currently not doing anything, mainly because they're there and they're not being used, which is a pity. So I think I'll start with those, get the guitar kind of operational and just give it a bit of living time. That's one of the things about these AristoCat guitars that I'm doing, is that they're old and battered things to begin with, and I have to take them slower because I have to kind of play them and live with them to make sure they've got that kind of character that I want, and that's a much slower process than, you know, just getting somebody's guitar in, setting it up for the weekend and sending it back out. I need to live with this a bit longer. Because it's not really just about whether this works. I know this works. It's about whether it feels good to play, even though it's plywood and it's a little bit more flexible in some ways than the solid wood guitar would be. So, you know, I want it to have character, that's what I'm saying. So let's try this out. Alright, there's no chokes there. Okay. So, just a quick recap then. With my Morris's Banana, my little 3 feet, the miracle of science, how 3 points can accurately map a curve, my little plastic spreader, which in this case happens to be a sort of snap connector for car electrics, doesn't really matter, it just happens to spread the strings nicely. With those tools, with this neck under compression, under proper load, with the action I want dialed in, with as much neck relief as we can get in this case, and with the action the first fret set perfectly how I want it, I've then gone and leveled the frets, tuning the tool as I come this way across the neck, because I know that it changes from side to side and I need to kind of model that. And what I've now got is a really low playing action, which, even though, you know, this is an old guitar, it's going to play superbly low. I've taken quite a bit of metal off some frets because of the way they were sitting up. This is always the case when you've installed them. Actually, it's always the case when they come out of the factory, but instead of them being leveled, very often all that happens is that the action's cranked up here so that you can play the guitar, and as soon as you try to lower it yourself at home, you hit the underlying uneven frets. So what I've done is made those far more level, and therefore tolerates a much lower action. It's taken quite a bit off the top few frets here, which is probably to do with the relative plateau of the neck here and the curvature, which probably exists only in the free section here, which is again quite common, and even more common in Les Paul copies, where set neck copies as well, where the neck is wedged against a great big wall of mahogany, and it's also way thicker than a Les Paul copy by the time you get here, so there's every reason for it to be stiff and unyielding. Okay, so I'm going to call time on this recording before I run out of audio batteries, but there we have it, filthy fingers. We have a superb low action, beautifully out of tune guitar. Let's get a note for a minute. Don't mind the rattling from the various bits. That's going to play remarkably smoothly by the time I've reprofiled those frets, which is the next step basically. So when this guitar is a bit different because I've got quite a bit of electrics building, I've got to get the pots and everything built. So really all I wanted to do today was get the neck part of it done. So I'm going to continue in a moment, but I'm going to reprofile the frets, which means now that they're flattened on the top, I'm going to need to reshape them so that they stay level with each other, but also are nicely shaped. And I'm going to then polish them all out so that the neck is kind of ready to go. And I'm not going to take it off on and off anymore if I can help it, because it's not a very strong joint in terms of the material that's used, and I want this to just stay firm. You wouldn't have seen this, but because of the screws I'm using and because of the relative thinness of this little piece here, it's unusually thin and it's ply, so it doesn't have the strength of solid wood, I've added a little lead, I don't know what you call it, filler. So there's a plate of lead under here which this is pulling to, which just pulls the screws a little bit back out. Otherwise they might have been just fractionally too long for my liking, but it also gives it a little bit of more material to sandwich in here, a bit of weight or solidity in that joint. I like lead, and no, lead doesn't affect your pickups, for goodness sakes. Somebody asked me that question the other week. Anyway, so basically at this point I can, I can either take the strings off now and carry on, or I could leave this like this, just kind of acclimatizing and come back to it another time. I might just do that. So I'll see you whenever I get back to it.